Throughout history, free thinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizwi and Armin Navabi.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment, and what a great day, what a blast from the past. Our guest right now is someone who was here on the very, very first episode of this podcast ever, because she was a founding member of this podcast. And, look at her then, look at her now. Yasmine Mohammed, welcome back. We're so happy. This feels like old time. I feel like we're hanging out. I don't even feel like there's an audience. Yeah. And
good to be back.
I'm going to...
Yeah, great time.
And for those of you who are living under a rock and they don't know, just a really quick thing. Yasmine is back. She has a brand new book out. It's a phenomenal book.
Yes.
For those of you who heard her story in the very first episode, this is that. It's gone into a lot more detail. It's just a completely riveting page turner. It's called Unveiled, How Western Liberals Empower Radical Islam. Which is, a fantastic title if you're familiar with what Yasmine does. Yasmine, you're also the founder of Free Hearts, Free Minds, right, which is an organization that is very, very unique because it helps ex-Muslims who often need a lot of, there are mental health problems that happen. There are, psychological issues that they have to grapple with and deal with, and you provide sort of very real and very sort of tangible and practical support for people like that. And it's a nonprofit. You do this. Our previous guest, Jimmy Bungush, who you all know and love, is also involved with that heavily. So they both work together on it. So Yasmine, welcome back.
Link to both the book and to Free Hearts and Free Minds in the description. By the way, guys, you have to buy this book. Okay, this is like within the ex-Muslim movement and stuff, there are some key books that if you don't read, you're missing out on a lot of the key ideas. Okay, so link in the description. The audiobook is going to come out soon. So for people like me that prefer the audio version, because like we work out or do dishes while we're listening to books, the audiobook is going to come out.
Work out. Armin works out, everybody. Good. Yeah.
Do you even lift, bro?
Also, Free Hearts, guys. The Free Hearts, Free Minds donate to that, because this is something that is really challenging to do. Like we tried it, it's like we failed many times. So the fact that Yasmine picked that up and is doing it consistently, because we did it for a while and then we failed and then we picked it back up, and we know how difficult it is to do something like this, right? So if somebody has managed to consistently do this and they haven't given up yet, you need to support that, because there is not that many services out there like this for people. And this is like the number of people that need help, the number of ex-Muslims that need help is way more than the service that is out there. So please support it so that services like this don't go away. Ali, send me the link so I make sure I put them in the description.
I will. Yeah, I'll do that. So now that the both of us men have spoken, sorry, I'm bringing identity politics into it just for fun. But Yasmine, how do you feel? Like you started here like a couple of years ago. Now you got this like the book out. It's doing really well. You just came off the Sam Harris podcast.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. So how's it going?
I feel tired. It's been an exhausting ride, but really rewarding. It's nice to hear Armin talking about Free Hearts, Free Minds, because it is a lot of work, but it's very rewarding work. And I have to give a big, huge shout out. You mentioned Jimmy, who is obviously an integral part of it, but also Obaid. Do you guys know Obaid Omar? Yes. Of course. Yeah. He's constantly helping me behind the scenes. So couldn't do it without his help too. So those two guys are so supportive and really helpful. And we're trying our best. We're really proud of the fact that there hasn't been one single lull. Like we've always been able to help at least one person, but of course we wish we could help more, but it depends on the donations. So we're just trying to find a way of, having some sort of sustainable income. So that's why I started things like the T-shirt, the Think Outside the box being the Kaaba, and that's
which was designed by Obaid.
That's right.
Yeah, Obaid came up with that. He's actually a very, if you follow him on online, he's one of the funniest guys and one of the wittiest, quickest guys I know. And I keep on telling people, I'm like, the guy's single, he's available. Like, I don't know why this guy hasn't been picked up yet, but
no, he's hilarious and such a huge heart, and I'm very, very grateful to have his help.
By the way, James in the live chat is saying, so happy to see all of you together again. A couple of people in the live chat saying that they already, Louis is saying she already bought the book, and some people are saying that they're already reading it. So yeah. So
good. So I've got a few talks coming up where I'll be selling the book. Like I'll be selling signed copies of the book. Like I'll be signing it for people. So that'll be cool too.
Yeah, and where is that? Do you want to just announce it here?
So I've got a few happening. I've got one happening in Victoria, BC, and one in Seattle, Washington. That's going to be at the Seattle Atheist Church on September 26th. And then I'm also going to be doing, I can't remember the name of the bookstore, but I'll post all this stuff in my newsletter. So subscribe to my newsletter, yasminemohammed.com. And all sorts of stuff. I got things planned for Australia and India and Norway and Budapest, like all over the place.
Ooh,
so I'll be posting everything.
Nice.
Okay,
yeah. So hopefully it
that's
gets
amazing.
Lots of people.
So yes, I wanted to kind of start with one thing for those of you who don't know Yaz's story. Just a really quick thing is Yaz is from an Egyptian Canadian family. She grew up in Vancouver, also stayed in Egypt for a little bit as well. You came here. You started where you were fitted with your first hijab at age 9. You had a stepfather, who was very, very abusive. At one point, when it became a legal issue, a Canadian judge dismissed the charges of abuse because they thought that this was a cultural issue that you had to deal with yourself. So, like just cultural relativism, which is, just really goes to the subtitle of your book. And then, most people know that you were forced into a marriage with a member of Al Qaeda as well, and you fortunately got out of that.
Right hand man of Osama bin Laden.
Right. So now I wanted to kind of start with one thing in your book, because this is something that people ask me about you a lot. They say that you're talking a lot about hijab. You talk a lot about hijab and niqab and all of that stuff, because these are things that you were forced to wear. And this is a quote from the hijab chapter in your book. You said, "Quite often I hear people wonder what's the big deal if you have to wear a scarf on your head. The big deal is that women are not even allowed agency over their own bodies." And then you say, "Hijab is just the tip of the iceberg. It is a physical representation of the subjugation and dehumanization and absolute gender apartheid that is commonplace in many parts of the Muslim majority world. While women in the West have gained their freedom to the extent that they're now calling to free the nipple, women in many parts of the Islamic world just want to free their face and free their hair." Right? So that is the idea, isn't it? That it's not just about a piece of cloth on your head. Can you talk about that a little bit for people?
Well, it's like if you envision a slave that is shackled, it's not just the shackles that are holding this slave in that house, right? That's just what you see. Right. But, of course, removing those shackles are the very first step in, freeing yourself. So in my book, I also tell the story of a Lebanese Canadian woman who was following me for a while. And, her and I were private messaging. She wasn't an ex-Muslim, so she couldn't join ex-Muslims in North America. So she was just like telling me about all her doubts and stuff. And we talked for probably about a year. And then she told me that she was going to remove her hijab on No Hijab Day. And I was like, that's awesome. I can't wait. And so on No Hijab Day, she made a video where she made this statement in Arabic, English, and in French. And then at the end of the video, she removes her hijab for the very first time. And then she gets like the cutest little smile on her face because she's super shy and embarrassed. Like, oh my God, the world just saw me with my hair out. And of course, that got retweeted like tens of thousands of times. And she felt like that was the big step for her. And then once she was able to remove this thing off of her head, she was able to remove so many other barriers in her life. And she got out of the abusive relationship that she was in. She eventually left Islam. She's now like living a free life. She's got, she's going to school. She's got a new boyfriend. She's just now getting to live the life that she's always wanted to live. And so taking off the hijab, it's like the first step. If you can't decide what goes on your head, you can't decide what goes in your head, Like it's just that they just need to do that first step, and then we'll see where things lead after that. But as long as you're physically constricted and physically constrained by something, it's, you just won't be able to go anywhere.
Yeah, yes, the example I use, can you tell me if this is a good example? Because this is what I use all the time to show how important this is. Imagine if me and my wife were talking, and then my wife interrupts me, and I tell her, okay, you shouldn't have interrupted me. Go sit in the corner, and think about what you did. And then you tell me, Armin, why are you treating your wife like this? And I could be like,
it's just a corner.
It's just sitting down. Like, sitting down is not that big of a deal. Me and you could sit down as well. Like, I'm tired actually as well. I could just sit down as well. Like, what's such a big deal about sitting down? But the fact that she had to go sit in the corner, about the nature of our relationship here. About her position in in our family. About her role and who she is, and how she thinks of herself just by having to sit down. So sitting down itself might not, in other contexts, might not. So this is why people don't understand. It's just like a hat. I could put on a hat. You don't understand what it symbolizes. You don't understand. You're telling women what their position is in society if they have to listen to you, and if they can't even choose what they put on their head or not.
No, that's perfect. That's a perfect analogy. In fact, I'm going to steal that. That's really good.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly it. Because it is really frustrating when you have these literally people who are clueless about anything, who just come jumping in and they're like, what's the big deal? The queen wears a scarf.
Right.
People come wear veils when they get married. It's like, you don't know the first thing about what we're talking about, but that's why your analogy is really perfect, because somebody can come along and be like, what's the problem? She's just sitting there. What's wrong with sitting?
Right.
Yeah. And it's also like a matter of like, because I've seen you when it comes to people who voluntarily wear it, for whom it is an honest choice, yes, that is a loaded term, but at the same time, you're not saying that it should be, people should be forced to not wear it or anything like that. People who wear it,
of course not. And that's the first go-to thing that people, just automatically respond to. And it's like, I never said that. So you're just responding to your own imagination. Right. But that's why I like another analogy is Alishma's analogy with the Confederate flag works really well too, because it's exactly that. Like, yes, you have the right to fly this flag if you want to, if you truly believe in whatever this flag symbolizes to you.
Heritage, identity.
Exactly. That's sure, you're free to do that. Nobody is going to stop you. But number one, we're free to make a judgment about that flag, regardless of whether you chose it or didn't choose it. Like, people think that just because these women chose it for themselves, that somehow we have to all accept it and celebrate it. It's like, women that are part of the, Mormon church also choose, what is it, that Latter-day Saints or whatever, where they have like 5 little girls to an old man and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, if you sit there and talk to those women or those girls, and they'll all talk about, yes, we love our husband or whatever, like, they chose that life, but they're indoctrinated into it. And we have to, we can't just flippantly talk about choice. Like you said, it's a loaded term. It comes from us as children. We're being told that, good, clean girls wear the hijab and they go to heaven, and filthy, dirty whores who are going to burn in hell for eternity don't wear it. So make your choice.
Yeah.
Another example is the KKK costume. I will defend the right of people wearing the KKK costume. If somebody wants to force them not being able, I will defend them. I would no, they have, but I don't defend what it represents. I disagree with what it represents, but I will defend everyone's rights to wear it.
Yeah, and I think that's where people kind of somehow they can't figure out the difference between those two things.
Yeah.
And I think I would never tell somebody you're not allowed to fly a Confederate flag, but if you're flying a Confederate flag, I have a problem with the flag.
Yeah.
And now it makes me understand who you are.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I can make a judgment on that.
It's so simple.
Yeah.
The idea is we will fight for your right to do something while criticizing it at the same time. This is
exactly.
This is such a simple thing, and I don't know why so many people don't think that's a contradiction.
Yeah. No, it's not a contradiction at all. It's just like freedom of religion and freedom from religion.
Right.
Of course, I think you all have the right. Everybody has the right to believe in whatever fairies or supernatural things that they want.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I agree with it.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that I respect their beliefs. But of course, I respect their right to believe whatever they want.
Right. So I had to another thing that illustrates this really well is just in terms of how the hijab is it's beyond just a piece of cloth is kind of when you talk about your mother, in the book, when you're talking about when you went to the Muslim school and these kids came up to you and they said things to you about your mom, about how, when after her marriage fell apart, she went and she, pursued other relationships. And you said, sorry, I'm just going to quote you here, and you can find the quote. You said, "I know now that from the moment my dad left her, she was desperately trying to get herself attached to another man. She used the only commodity she had to offer." And the reason that resonates is that, people say that or the women, especially people who wear hijab, they're like, "Oh, because I'm not an object." I'm like, well, when you're covering yourself up, that implies, actually it very explicitly says that I am an object who needs to be covered, that I am a sort of the commodity part of it, which is my body and my entire essence has to be covered. So it's inevitable that you're going to start thinking of yourself as a commodity. So, and I actually felt a lot of sympathy for your mom. I looked at this and I know that she did terrible things, and in a lot of cases you were frustrated because she didn't defend you, but at the same time she was a victim, and I think you acknowledge that too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can feel the same way about Assam. Right, sure, he's a jihadi, and I know that he murdered countless people, but I could still recognize that he was a victim of his circumstances, and that I can still feel pity for him too. Now, that does not excuse anything that he has done, right? And it's the same for my mom. Like, I understand how she became who she became, and I understand why she did the things that she did, but I don't understand it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't get it.
Right.
But I can... Yeah, go ahead.
No, a lot of people confuse, again, this is another source of confusion. Explaining something and excusing something is not the same thing, right? When you're trying to explain why somebody might become a terrorist or become an Islamist, they're like, oh, you're excusing it. No, you could explain something and condemn it at the same time. One thing I get in trouble for is like when I say, oh, whenever there's a terrorist attack, they usually, when they're counting the number of victims, they're usually one victim short, the attacker himself or herself. And people call me a terrorist sympathizer. I'm like, no, this person, I'm condemning the person while feeling sorry. Like, this person lost their lives to Islam way before anybody else during that attack. I mean, sympathizing doesn't mean you're sympathizing with the act. You're sympathizing with the person and the fact that they are a victim. They're being sacrificed to Islam, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important point to make, especially in this world today where people make this assumption that the Middle East or that Muslim majority countries are just full of a bunch of psychopaths. Right. That are just full of a bunch of people that like to go into murderous rages and trucks of peace and, stabbing people on bridges in London and stuff, just because of the fact that they're inherently evil. Yeah. And so we're trying to explain that they are not inherently evil. They were not born with this murderous tendency, that they have been indoctrinated. They've been poisoned. Their brains have been poisoned with this ideology that tells them that in order to be a good person, that this is what they have to do. And, you know, Sam Harris has a really good comparison where he talks about parents of a Jehovah's Witness child. And if those parents decide, I'm not going to give a blood transfusion to my daughter, even though I know that my daughter is going to die, but I would rather her die than do something that is against my religion. And so my God wants her to die, so therefore she's going to die. And we would never look at that parent and say, that mother is just a murderous psychopath and she wanted to kill her daughter and she's just using her religion as an excuse. Like, we would never say that about a Jehovah's Witness person, but then we are so quick to say it about Muslim people. It's the exact same thing. They are just normal human beings like you or I, except for the fact that they got poisoned with this ideology. I mean, the thing is, we all got poisoned with it because they're poisoning all of us, but it's not going to always take, you know, it's pretty odds. So it's 1.7 billion people, I guess, is the latest number. And so obviously not all 1.7 billion people are going to take on the edicts and take on the demands of the religion, but some people will. You know, you can see them in the camps in Syria. In the Al-Hol camp, there's like 70,000 people in total still in that camp, but 10,000 of them are foreigners. They are women from like Australia and Finland and the UK and Germany, and these women have covered themselves head to toe in black. They're living in absolute squalor. Their children are filthy and starving, and they love it. They're happy. They're still happy to stand there and defend ISIS and say ISIS will rise again. Like, people get indoctrinated with stuff that takes over their mind, and they end up supporting their own subjugation. They end up supporting the murder of their own children sometimes, as women in Iraq. Remember when they were putting the bombs into their baby's diaper because the American military aren't going to check. And I remember speaking to Faisal after that, and he's like, all of these people are so surprised, like, oh, how could the mother do that? He said, meanwhile, I'm over here going, how could they not know that the mother was going to do that? You know, like that's obviously what she would do, because to her, she just thinks me and my baby are going to go to heaven, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So you think it's the most horrific thing, but it makes the most sense to them.
And it's actually, I think what you said is very sort of compassionate and even a sort of pro-Muslim thing where, you know, you're saying that, yes, it's true. If a Jehovah's Witness refuses to give their kid a blood transfusion, you know, you say, well, that's wrong. They shouldn't have done that. But when a Muslim person does something like an honor beating or an honor to their kid, you just say, well, you know, that was a terrible parent. It was this, but it all really comes down to indoctrination.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
by the way, Zia, one of our patrons in the live chat is saying something that I disagree with. I just want to point that out. He's saying, he or she is saying, Islam and Quran must be banned. Quran must be recognized as an illegal brainwashing weapon. I just want to point to Zia. I think all three of us here disagree with that. Like, I don't think you can or should ban the Quran or Islam. That's not the effective way. In fact, that's the best way to promote Islam. If you want Islam to grow faster,
if you want to.
Yeah.
There's a whole
history.
history
back to what we were saying.
Yeah, exactly.
It's back to what we were saying at the beginning about defending people's right to believe whatever they want, but we don't have to support it and we don't have to respect it. So it's the same sort of thing. We don't want to ban the religion. We don't want to ban the Quran. We're not even banning Mein Kampf, for goodness sake.
Right.
But, you know, that doesn't mean that we support it in any way.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you is that while you were writing this book, because I'm seeing, like, in this book, especially I'm kind of really taken by the way that you're talking about your mother. Like, that just, it almost feels like this is the sense I got. And I wanted to ask you about this. So you've done...
Just one thing before you continue. The Quran is worse than the Mein Kampf. I just want to point that out. But go on, Ali. Continue.
Okay, well, now that we have both of you on this podcast, yeah, let's open up that thing again. That'll be great, the Quran and Mein Kampf. But so when now that you're doing work with Free Hearts, Free Minds, right, and you see other people coming in and you're sort of really getting an exposure to different people who leave this and the psychological issues they have with the indoctrination, how powerful it is. And during the process of writing this book, did it make you look at things from your past or people from your past differently? Not in the sense that you're excusing anything they did, I know that everything was terrible, but just in terms of, sometimes when you understand the process, when you're a little bit sort of dispassionate, you're writing about it, you're looking at it from a distance, then did that open up other things just in your mind in terms of?
No, absolutely. It did for sure. But I mean, it's the same, like, even if we're talking about this mom that was indoctrinated and she's not going to give the blood transfusion to her kid and her kid dies.
Of course,
like,
there's no excuse.
There's no excuse. So it's still like, yes, she was indoctrinated, but at the end of the day, she murdered her kid. So that's really how it is with my mom too. Like, I did, through writing the book, have more of an understanding of the fact that this is, the way she was raised and her mindset, and she was going through depression, and she had 3 kids that she had to take care of, and she was feeling overwhelmed, and I can understand all of that. But the damage that has happened because of the choices that she has made is just too much for me to get to that point where I'm going to be like, well, she was indoctrinated. It's kind of, I think it would be very different if she were to come to me today and accept that she had done things wrong, or want to apologize for the way things had gone. But the truth is, my mom is just as militant as she was. In fact, she's worse. I have one uncle that speaks to me. And when I said to him, she used to get like Yusuf Qaradawi books from Egypt, and she was like obsessed with Hassan al-Banna. And then he's like, oh, Yasmine, she's way worse than that now. She's like totally graduated from those men. And I was like, what? So there is no room for us to have that. You know what I mean? Like, there's no room, there's no space for any difference to happen in our relationship.
This uncle who's in touch with you, has he been in touch with you throughout, or is it a recent thing?
No, it was about 10 years after I left Islam that he contacted me for the first time.
Yeah.
I shouldn't even be like, I'm pretty confident nobody in my family is going to be watching secular jihadists, but him and my mom don't get along.
No, go on.
Yeah.
Him and my mom don't get along, so he's kind of like messaging, like, we have a relationship, but he would never publicly admit to the rest of the family that he talks to me. Do you know what I mean? Because my mom's still the matriarch. And but he did tell me that I have a cousin in Seattle that married a Jewish man. And so she was disowned by her family. And I didn't really know about her because her dad was my mom's half brother, but then he died and they were divorced. And so her mom just raised her, they moved to New York. And so the kind of like, it severed the ties between us. The last time I saw her, I was 9 years old. But anyway, I discovered that I have an ex-Muslim cousin.
Really?
And so,
Are you in touch with her?
Yeah, I'm in touch with her, and it's wonderful to actually have family again. Right. So, and my kids have an aunt.
There was this thing I saw on Reddit. There was this guy who I don't know. I think it was Imtiaz who posted it. Or there was this guy who had just drummed up the courage to come out to his family and to tell his brother he doesn't believe in Islam anymore. After for years and years and years he was thinking, because he had to like go with the motion. So he finally came out and told his brother, and his brother started laughing, and he's like, there's a whole text thread, it's hilarious. And he's like, yeah, we've been here all along, we've been ex-Muslim. And he couldn't believe it. He's like, well, what does your wife think about it? It's like, oh, she is too. We're all,
we're all living a lie.
He's like, I can't believe this is amazing. Like, I love this, and it's been happening. You're hearing these stories so much now. Yeah. All right, like when did this start? It was honestly just a couple of years ago. I think
it's the internet. I really do. Like, back to Maryam Balazi's quote about the internet doing for Islam what the printing press did for Christianity. Right. Like, people are just seeing that they're seeing honestly the lunacy, because I don't know if you guys remember, but when you're indoctrinated in that stuff and everybody around you is saying the same thing, you never stop to question it. And then when somebody says something else, you just feel like a complete moron. You're like, whoa, how could I have believed that this whole time? Like, you just feel like an idiot. And so I think that the internet is really doing that for people. Like they're getting, like, a lot of non-Muslims know Islam a lot more than even Muslims do.
Right.
Like so many people studied Islam after 9/11 because they're really trying to figure out, like, what is this religion? And most Muslims never even study their own religion. They don't know anything about, they haven't even read the Quran, let alone the Hadith and the Sirah. They don't know anything. And so they go online and they start arguing, right? Like, whatever it is, Muhammad was the first feminist. And then they have all these people coming back at them with evidence and proof and, like, receipts. And so it shakes their faith.
I want to brag a little bit. I started questioning it when I was a teenager before hearing anybody questioning it.
No, you did. That's true.
He did. Right. And he also works out. By the way, that's also don't forget. Armin lift, man. It's not just So
what
I want.
Can we get, Ali, whenever you want to transition to the other part of the book about the regressive left and stuff, because I want to talk about that as well. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to do. So
Me
now
and
we're
you
going to
are
talk about
connected in our minds. Okay.
Yeah. Today it's working. Yeah. So we are. So the subtitle of your book is how Western liberals empower radical Islam. This is something that all of us have talked about here a lot. Where do you think that is? I remember a little while ago when we started talking about it, and when Majid Nawaz coined regressive left, and that was a big thing, and we'd been discussing it a lot. Now I'm seeing, and I'll tell you my quick observation first. Now I've seen that it's kind of gone in both directions, like really nuts. On one side, you've got Jeremy Corbyn and all these guys who are just clearly out, just like sympathizing with Hamas and Hezbollah, and just insane, like the anti-Semitism. Yeah. You have that, and then on the other hand, I'm actually, on the other hand, I'm seeing there's a separate section of liberals that have kind of woken up, that are not, I don't want to say woke in any way.
No, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, they've woken up in the sense that, like, for instance, people like Bill Maher, even I've noticed, at least from my Twitter
Bill Maher
followers.
Was never, on this issue, was never...
No, but he's become, there are more people who've come around to his style of thinking, the way that he thinks. His arguments have sort of started getting some traction. The other thing is, I've got, like, from my followership, I have a lot of sort of comedians, like the comedy community in Hollywood, like they tend to follow, and they're many of them, especially the Jewish liberals, they understand this a lot more. They understand this whole compassion for Muslims, but criticism of Islam, right? Because that's that's something that they relate to personally. Where do you think this whole thing is now with the Western liberals?
I think you're right. I think that the voices of the rational liberals, I think those voices have become louder. They've become much more, I think that they needed some time to feel confident in this nuanced argument, because whenever, as soon as you'd raise your voice to say something about Islam, it was just this automatic, just attack of like Islamophobia. Yeah. And so everybody just shut their mouth. Everybody just went quiet. And I think that we have, made enough noise in this space, we being, rational liberal people, that it's empowering other people to kind of go, yeah, that makes sense. Exactly. I agree with this, So I don't know if you saw recently, I retweeted a video from Maddie Healy, who is the lead singer of the 1975. So it's a UK pop group, where he was, he listened to me on Sam Harris, and he was basically saying the same thing in his video that I had been saying on my podcast with Sam Harris. So him and I were chatting, and it's like, it's so glorious to have somebody who is, he's a very big LGBT supporter, so he can very clearly see how there are issues with Islam. And I think that in the UK, they had that whole issue with the no outsiders. Yeah. So that really brought things sort of to this crossroads where they realized, okay, we have a problem. Right. You know, we we're gonna have to speak out now. We can't just continue silence and hoping that things will go away and things will get better. And so I'm really happy to see that there are a lot more voices coming out in the middle. Having said that, Nike just came out with their latest swimsuit.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, stuff like that happens also. So it's just this constant, you know, roller coaster of feeling hopeful and then feeling depressed and feeling hopeful and feeling depressed.
But isn't that better than feeling depressed all the time? Because I think...
What's the issue? Like, can you explain to us what's the issue with Nike, like, having hijab-friendly products?
My problem with it is that there is a literal war going on right now. So it's not like if they were just going to put their swoosh on like Mormon underwear or something like that. If they want to support fundamentalist religious clothing, they're not even supporting something benign. What they're doing is they're supporting something that is literally getting women killed, getting women imprisoned in your country, as you know, of Iran. And so it is a very heated thing that is happening right now. And they have the choice of joining in and supporting these women who are fighting for their freedom, or they have the choice of none of their business and just keep quiet, or they have the choice of supporting this actual tool that is the thing that these women are fighting against. So I think that there's a misunderstanding, and they think that when they support the hijab that they are supporting Muslim women, and that's where they're wrong. Because Muslim women, there is a fight over this. There is a debate that is raging right now. And so when they go and they put their swoosh and they endorse one side of the debate, then whether they like it or not, they are betraying the other side of the debate. And if you're going to be a liberal, progressive corporation from a Western democracy, then you should be supporting the women that are fighting for their freedom.
So I have the devil's advocate. I have my own response to this devil's advocate, but I want to see what you would say. So people say, like, of course we'll support the women in, for example, in Iran who are fighting for their freedom. But we fight for women's freedom everywhere, for women in Iran not to wear the hijab, and for women other places to wear the hijab if they choose to. So how would you respond to that? And I have my own.
So who's we? Because I haven't seen Nike do anything in support of women in Iran. I haven't seen anyone from the left, to be honest. I heard Pompeo. I heard people from the Trump administration supporting White Wednesday's movement and supporting the people in Iran in general. They are hypocrites. I have never. So
that's Samar Badawi. You're letting hypocrites take the platform because you're not doing anything. You're leaving a void for them to fill, right? Who else?
I mean, people like Lujain al-Haflul and Samar Badawi has a picture where she's standing in between Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama. She's standing in between those two women, those two powerhouses. And she has been rotting in prison for years right now. Neither of those women thought to raise their voice to support her. The only person who raised their voice to support her was here in Canada.
Krista Friedland.
Exactly. She's the only woman that spoke up for her, which led to this backlash and yada, yada. But that's the bravery. That's the courage. That's what we need to see. Instead of supporting, instead of putting a swoosh on a Nike hijab, how about supporting these women that are rotting in prison because they're trying to find, they want to drive or they want to have, to abolish gender apartheid.
My response would be like, okay, fine, if you could have a Nike hijab, but let's also, why not a Nike KKK custom as well, right? Like, what, to me, because people are like, oh no, that's too much. Armin, it's not KKK custom is a lot worse. I'm like, no, it's not. The hijab is a symbolism of slavery of, 500 million people on this planet. Like that's
when you put your logo on something, you're endorsing it. Right. You're saying, I support this, and this is what I agree with this.
Right.
And so that's what Nike is doing.
So I get
So
the same.
a lot
Like
of-
if Nike came out with KKK costumes with the swoosh symbol in it, the reaction that the shock that people
Exactly.
would have to that's what I feel when I see a hijab with a swoosh symbol
Yeah.
on it. Right. But go
I
on now.
think that, a lot of times, I mean, these are, in a corporate, like, sort of free market world, they're going to do what it takes. I'm not justifying it. I completely agree with you, Yas, that they're going to do what they do to get profits. But I think one of the things that can change that is that, when you're talking about how there are more sort of Western liberals who are coming around to it, like the singer for the 1975, who heard you on Sam Harris's podcast. Similar thing kind of happened with Sarah Hayter. Is Jack Dorsey on Twitter actually heard her on there, and they are. And I see this
But
myself.
ex-Muslims are still being suspended on Twitter, left, right, and center. But
That's
anyway.
I wanted to actually. We're going to talk about that as well. That's also one thing I had on my list to talk, because all three of that's happened to all three of us. Well, two of you more than me. But so what? What was I going to say? I was going to say something really important. Yeah. So when a lot of this has to do with when these people because how often do you hear this? People come up to you and they're like, wow, I've had this in the back of my mind for ages. I just didn't know how to say it. But now that you're here, I can support you. That happens to me. That's happened to you. That's happened to Sarah. I'm pretty sure it happens to Armin. And the fact that we're actually coming out and doing this, and all of us have books, that are out there, it helps people. I think that is helping it. I think that, when you say that you have noticed a change in Western liberals coming out and speaking more honestly about these things, I think that you are one of the people who is directly responsible for that change in Western. I'm not exaggerating. I think that that's these voices that have come out. People like Majid, people like us, people like Sarah, and everything. When they come out, it gives a sort of legitimacy, especially when they know that. I mean, you have a lot of liberal supporters, which is, there's a lot of people who say, oh, you're right wing, you're neo-Nazi, you're this and that. But at the same time, you get a lot of support from people who understand where you're coming from. And okay, now I'm going to get to my question. I swear to God.
Yeah.
Please.
I just want to say, I think that it's old news. It used to be before that as soon as you spoke up against Islam, people would be like, neo-Nazi, KKK, Islamophobic. People don't do that anymore. There's less of that.
They're moving to anti-Semitic, like the favorite things that people get accused of these days, because Islamophobia has lost its sting, right? Racism, Islamophobia, misogyny. I think the two areas that still has that stinging power is baseless accusations of anti-Semitic views, and also transphobic. Like, if you just talk about it just a little bit, like, oh, I don't know, what is this? Like, oh, transphobic, oh, anti-Semitic. Like, so I think that those are, people are, Islamophobia is 2018, like, it's old news. But 2019 is a better
that's a different topic, and I think we, especially now with as we're speaking today. Well, actually, this is a tangent. I don't want to get into it right now. I wanted to ask you that question because you brought it up. You said that you were talking about how in the UK, those protests, the Muslim parents protesting in primary schools in Birmingham and all these places, saying that we don't want our kids to learn about LGBT people, that they even exist. We just don't want them to know that there is such a thing.
They were saying being gay is not okay.
It's not okay, right? And so now everybody's seeing this, very, very prominent. And we spoke about this. We've been speaking about this in the entire year, that we think like the next front for this, now that the ex-Muslim movement has been, thankfully, it's becoming more and more normalized. It's more normalized than ever. But the next front, really, when it comes to Western liberals, is this LGBT front. Because at this point, these people, they have to choose now. They're like, oh, do we want to be seen as Islamophobic or homophobic?
Yeah.
And they don't want to be seen as homophobic. They don't want to be seen as Islamophobic either, but they have to choose. And now they're at this crossroads. And I think it's so important that we focus our efforts on this right now, because that really, you know how the hijab symbolizes this gender apartheid and the misogyny and everything. I think this one issue symbolizes the entire conflict that you summed up in your subtitle. And so, I'm going to shut up. But what do you think?
No, I totally agree with you on that. And I've also seen a real shift in the LGBT community itself, like seeing Pink News and stuff like that. They used to be. They used to they'd support Muslims that were hating them, you know, but now there's enough, you know, I think that they're not getting enough support with things like that. They're getting a lot of people within the community are feeling empowered enough to speak up against it. And I remember having people at my talks all the time, like gay people or trans people, that would just be like, I have to carry a gun now because I don't even feel supported. I don't even feel protected, like within my own, like what used to be our safe spaces before, because the people that are talking are saying things like they support Islam and they support people that want to throw me off of the highest rooftops, you know? And so I think that that's really changing. And it's, you know, it's just a continuation of what we said earlier is, people now they feel empowered to speak up because they have the language, or they have us, I guess, on the front lines, just to be like, I agree with Ali Rizvi, you know, as opposed to them saying it themselves. So they've sort of got that brown.
You know, I saw like even with the Ilhan. One second, Armin. Just on this. One second. Sorry, Yasmin, we're fighting for your attention. I will. I promise.
Yeah,
I wanted to say this. I wanted to bring this up because Ilhan Omar, when she was wearing the hijab and she was at the Pride Parade and she had just her T-shirt on with bare arms and she was dancing in public at the Pride Parade. People. So she's trying to show us, look, I'm Muslim. Great. And I'm totally like pro, gay rights and all that stuff. But then you go through the responses to all of that. And everybody, all of the Muslims were skewering her. So that's also something a lot of people noticed.
And then like, people need to see that. People need to, and that's what's happening a lot. That's what's happening with this Nike thing too. A lot of Muslims are like, this is not hijab.
Like you can see the whole curves and everything.
That's exactly what they're saying. They're like, we can see the shape of her body. This is bullshit, you know. And I'm like, I kind
of feel bad for these so-called liberal Muslims stuck in the middle, because like everybody's like, I think they're dangerous, and I really hate what they're spreading, but at the same time I really feel bad for them because they're like attacked from all sides. And if you think like the right-wing people are attacking them, you have no idea the shit that they're getting from Muslims. Like they are.
Oh, I know the shit that they are getting. Because we were all Muslims, we all lived in that community. Look, you saw what happened to there's a UK model. Her name is Dina Tokyo. She was a hijabi model, and then she decided to take off her hijab. Did you see what they did to that poor woman? She has a video online. It's called the Bad, the Ugly, and the Worse, or something like that, where just for like 1 hour, all she does is just read all of the hate that she's getting from the Muslim community because she decided what she wanted to put on her own body, right? Like rape threats, murdering her family, like the most horrific things. And that's what happens if you're a Muslim and you try to stray off of the Sirat al-Mustaqim, right? That long, thin, straight path. And they're always judging each other. They're always policing each other, not policing themselves or judging themselves, right? All the men that are coming on my page talking about women need to cover their heads. Meanwhile, if you scroll through their timeline, it's going to take you like 2 or 3 tweets before you see him posting some porn or something, right? Like they have completely different rules for themselves than they have for everybody else in the society. So I know what Muslims go through when they try to step outside of the lines. But that's the thing. Like you gotta, you know, if you're treading on thin ice, then you might as well dance. If they're gonna hate you anyway and you're not gonna be accepted anyway, then fuck it. Just enjoy your life. Just do what makes you happy.
And a lot of the progress I think that we have made is not just ex-Muslims here, like not here anymore for me, but for in Western countries, but or European and North American countries, but also getting connected with all the other activists in Islamic countries, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard to ignore them as well, because they're like living with it. Like here, if these activists getting connected with each other and seeing their struggles, what they're dealing in Lebanon, Iran, in Saudi Arabia, and I think it's really hard for a lot of people on the left now to justify their position, because the left is supposed to be against the oppressors, right? So just connecting them with people, activists in other countries, like feminists in Islamic countries, right?
I got to tell you, Armin, the feminists and the activists in the Arab world, I don't know about the rest of the Muslim majority countries, but they do not have the time of day for Western liberals.
Right.
They're always telling me, like, why are you wasting your time talking to those people? They don't care about us. They don't care about right and wrong. They don't actually care about liberty and freedom. They care about themselves.
Well, because
that's what I'm getting from.
Well, because but I don't want to give up hope on anybody, because for every.
No, I can't.
Because
it's different. This is my world, right? This is where my daughters are being raised. This is where I was raised. So I can't turn my back on the Western world like they do, right? But I understand where they're coming from.
Right.
Like, I understand that feeling of like, whatever, they don't give a shit about us. Why are you still talking to them? Why are you even bothering? I had this friend of mine, she's a Syrian living in Germany, an atheist, and she was like, I cannot wait to see Sharia in Germany. I would love to see it. That's what they want. She's like, that's what they're wishing and hoping and praying for. I hope they get their wish. I would love to see that. She's like, they're just sick of it. They're sick and tired, and they don't have the patience. And you know how Arabs are hardcore anyway, right? So they just. Yeah.
So, a lot of us though predicted that this marriage between the regressive left and Islam is going to go through a major divorce when more and more LGBT stuff is highlighted, because that's the red line for both of them, right? So we always like, how are they getting along? Like LGBT, like when is that gonna come up in their relationship with each other? And we knew that this is going to be the sticking point. What
would have been? You'd think that the Florida nightclub would have been the catalyst for this conversation, right?
Right, but here's the thing: that what they say to that is like, "Oh, that's not Islam. That's just a crazy minority." But what I think why now they're paying attention to it is because in London, for example, with the mass number of average Muslims coming out and protesting, and they're saying like, this is not like forget the jihadists and the terrorists. This is the whole idea of gay bad is a mainstream view. Like
they're
so
finally getting it.
So that's what they're getting at. That's what they're understanding now.
Mm-hmm.
So
what do you think as of like there's been these sort of stunning polls that have come out in the last couple of years. Well, actually, honestly, just really this year. There's one that was in The Economist. I think it was a Pew poll that showed that 1 in 4 people. I mean, ex-Muslims in North America actually made the billboards based on that. That 1 in 4 people in the United States raised Muslim
but also
are
in the Arab
left
world
Islam.
too. Yeah.
Now, in the Arab world, the people who are identifying as non-religious went up from 8% to I think 13% now. And when they looked at younger people, and this is a trend that's across the world, younger people of all religions, millennials, I guess, because they have the internet, they're exposed to different ideas in a way that we weren't growing up. They are in Tunisia, like about half of younger Muslims, right, are now non-religious. Right, and in Egypt, it's 20%. Right, that's 1/5. I mean, the whole thing is. This is growing in a sort of exponential way. I mean, we see it anecdotally as well, but now the polling is kind of bearing out the numbers and what we've been seeing. So,
I think ISIS helped a lot with that too.
Yeah, no kidding.
ISIS, the Muslim parents who are protesting at the Birmingham schools, like these kinds of images. Yeah, they did help a lot.
Yeah, because like after 9/11, that was the thing that really shook my faith. Where I was like, do I want to identify with the same ideology of these murderers? Like, do I want to be connected to these men in any way? Like, it really makes you start to question the ideology more. Like, you're not just living your life as a cultural Muslim and not really paying attention, but you have to you're face to face with, this is what the religion teaches. This is the end of the line here.
Right.
Like, these are my people.
These are my
This is
people.
Like, wow,
this is my community. I'm a part of this. And people were seeing that with ISIS. Like we talked earlier about how Muslims, they never read the Quran, they never read anything, they don't know, they're just living their lives. But when they see what ISIS is doing, and then they're like, what the hell? How are they Muslim and doing that? That doesn't make any sense. But then they get the counter argument, says, well, did you look at the Prophet's life? Did you see what he did? They're basically copying him. They're following the same footsteps. And then they start doing their homework. And then it's like this moment of like, holy shit.
It's a combination. Like, you see what ISIS is doing, you wonder about your own identity and what I was everything I told, was that true or not? I wrote about this in my book. It's like when I that happened to me when I was growing up in Saudi, right? Because I was seeing, it was essentially ISIS all around me, right? So so I was questioning that myself. It's like, I'm Muslim and these guys are Muslim. But then when they go and they do their homework, I think that's where the real transition thing happens. Because when I used to do my homework, I used to ask my parents, their parents' friends, and they'd like, oh, it's a religion of peace.
Yeah. It was harder to do your homework back then, but now you have the internet, right?
Yeah, there were. And then now you go to the internet and you can just Google all of these verses and you can get their syntax and the arrangement. You can hover your mouse over a fucking word and the translation will pop up. It's like that. And it just becomes okay, well,
actually,
what are you gonna do?
Can I give people a tip? Because every time you show a verse, people say out of context. It's very easy on how to fight that. Just go look at the tafsir by Arab-speaking scholars, and you're like, look, these people got the same interpretation about this verse that I got, right? For 1400 years, right? So if I took it out of context, how come every other scholar also took it out of context just with me? So look up tafsir.
Yeah, I find that so arrogant too. Yeah. It's like all of these scholars that spent their lives studying Sharia, right, that have built these laws. Like, let's take the laws in Iran or in Saudi Arabia, for example. Like, these are built by people who are legal scholars in Sharia. Right. And then you've got some random dude on the internet, right? Like Muslim Lover 101 or something. And he's like, that's out of context. That's not actually what that ayah means. It's like, who the fuck are you? How arrogant are you to think that you know more than these people that have spent their lives studying this religion,
it usually gets worse when you put it in context. You're like, oh yeah, okay, let's put it in context. It gets a lot worse.
It does.
I will give you actually an even, for lazier people who don't want to go to tafsir, I'll give you an even better tip to look at it. If you're wondering if anything's been put out of context, just take whatever the verse is about. If it's about, say, infidels or disbelievers, just substitute it for the word with the word Muslim. Okay, if it's about belief in other gods, and substitute it for belief in Allah, right? So
you're gonna get kicked off. You're gonna get banned from Facebook and Twitter though if you do that.
You know, it looks like this verse, the 8:55 and 56, where it says, "Indeed, the worst of all living creatures in the sight of Allah are those who disbelieved." Like, just put Muslims in there, and then see the worst of all living creatures in the sight of Darwin are Muslims, or in the sight of whatever the hell you want to substitute Allah for. Right? The worst of all living creatures are those who believe in Allah and who are Muslims. So that is the verse of the Quran that has now been switched over, turned inside out, and now it's about Muslims. Now try to justify it. How convincing would you find the arguments if I tell you that this is taken out of context?
Yeah.
That's all you got to do. It's amazing. But okay, so
before you go to Patreon questions, can I just tell? Yes. I think if you're doing tours around the world and you're speaking around, please go to Israel.
That's part of the plan. Yeah, good. I have plans to go to Israel too.
Okay. First of all, and spend some time just going around other than just speaking as well, all right? Especially in Jerusalem. By the way, if you get in touch with atheist activists in Israel, one thing that I noticed is that I was trying to use them the same way other people use ex-Muslims. Like, how a lot of people are like, if I say stuff about Islam, they're going to call me a racist. Here, ex-Muslims, brown people, go talk about Islam. So that, because it's, I noticed, for a very long time before I went to Israel, I was scared talking about Judaism, and I was, talking to atheists.
Oh, my God. Jews are the biggest critics of Judaism.
Exactly. And I was like, can you guys
They have no
speak up?
issues.
Yeah, and I was like, can you guys
Yeah.
speak out more, because I can't say these things. And some of them are like, you're a hypocrite, Armin. You should say these things. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
I should say it. So they told me that they thought I'm a person that doesn't hold back, and I want them to say
Well,
things.
their religion is different, right? They encourage questioning. They have a saying where they say the son that doesn't question is the dumb one. So they want people to, they are fine with criticism. That's why they make good lawyers.
Well, we're talking about I'm talking about atheist, anti-religion, ethnic Jews. I'm not talking about religious.
Yeah.
Jews. Right.
Yeah.
But in practice, the Orthodox Jewish ones, in practice, they don't like questioning at all.
No, that's different. Yeah, I knew you were talking about atheists. Orthodox, anything, they don't like questioning their ideologies. They accept it a lot more than Muslims do, though. Like the rabbis will put up with it.
If you end up going, like, before you go, just let me remind me to tell you a few places to check out while you're there. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, I will.
Yeah, and by the way, for those of you who who don't know about this, check out Armin's videos that he made with Drew, the genetically modified skeptic, in Palestine and Israel. I mean, they have some insane video footage that you're not going to see anything like that anywhere else. So do check it out.
Yes. Can I tell something else? Because this is something that we couldn't record because they were hidden. But I want to tell her that this is so encouraging. There's a huge atheist community in Palestine. Okay.
Oh yeah, Palestinians are
And we went like these are hijabi girls. Hijabi women, that are atheists, and they had to fake it, not because of society, but because of her family, right? Because I saw a non-hijabi woman as well, and we were
cis
like,
women.
We went,
cis?
What? No,
we were
in Ramallah. Okay, yes, in Ramallah, me and some with Drew and some atheists and this hijabi atheist. We were in a bar drinking alcohol, and the azan was playing in the background in the afternoon. It was so amazing.
So beautiful. Yeah. Mashallah.
Hey, okay. So last thing we have to go to. We have a lot of really good patron questions coming up. Yeah. Hopefully we'll get to all of them. But we've got 30 minutes left. So I wanted to ask you just about. We're talking about the internet and Maryam Namazi's quote about how the internet is really connecting people, but at the same time, you get banned from Twitter. Armin gets banned from Twitter. Our secular jihadist account gets banned from Twitter. They get suspended, and then they
bring it back.
They just bring it back. Like once we.
Oh, by the way, yes, thank you for supporting me when I saw you retweeting that. Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah, and right back at you. They did it for us because I think that there was a huge backlash, and in my case, Sam texted Jack Dorsey to help get my account reinstated. But there are a lot of ex-Muslims that are getting their accounts shut down, and they're not coming back up again.
They're not, yeah.
No, for things like drawing Muhammad, for things like saying Allah is a cunt.
Yeah, that was Faye.
That's Faye. She's gone. She had to start a new account.
I know.
Right? And so there's all sorts of people are losing their accounts all the time that because there isn't the huge backlash to get them back up again. Mm-hmm. And I think what happened with us was legitimately it wasn't anything that we had tweeted. In my case, it was mass reporting.
Yeah.
They mass reported me as spam. And so they just automatically, but then once they look at the account, they're like, oh, okay, obviously you're legit. And that's why they were able to turn it back on again. Right. But when they do have a question where it's like, it's genuinely something that is insulting to Islam, then they don't turn it back on again.
They don't. Yeah. And that's why I think, because I've noticed this with like a lot of the other guys who've been doing this, like Harris Sultan, Abdullah Gandhi, Abdullah Samir. These are guys who are, and they have big followings in Pakistan, Urdu speaking, and those countries, and they get banned from Facebook all the time. Alishba gets banned from Facebook, and she doesn't even use Facebook anymore because of it. I guess they won in that sense, and I just wanted to get quickly your perspective on what the solution to this is, and I'll go first. I think that we have these different sort of platforms. There's Instagram, there's Twitter, there's Facebook, there's all this stuff. Right now, we don't really have any alternatives that can go on, so we have to make the best of it. I feel like if we just figure out what things work on different platforms and use those platforms accordingly, and we just go by it, try to work around it as much as we can until a better system comes around. That's what I've noticed. I have a very different type of style that I use on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and that has been able to.
Yeah, I guess you're a lot more patient than I am. I just found that Twitter's the safest place. Like it's the most accepting place of like Twitter is okay with anonymous accounts and stuff because they believe that free speech should reign supreme. So if people are too afraid to put their face or too afraid to put their name because they're in a community or they're in a society where they wouldn't be allowed to say what they want to say. So they want to be able to create an anonymous account so that they can say what they want to say. Twitter supports that. Facebook is on the other side of the fence, and they're saying, no, we want people to be civil to each other is much more important to us than people being able to speak their minds in societies where they could be ostracized for it or even executed.
But they're okay,
so they don't really care.
Ads. Yeah, they're
I know.
okay.
That's true.
It's just so bizarre, man.
No, that's true. Yeah,
I've noticed that YouTube.
They get paid,
YouTube
maybe.
Is also, YouTube is also a lot better generally than Facebook on this, so you can do different things. But on the other hand, our interview with Leon Korteweg, who was a former white nationalist, right? He was part of a neo-Nazi group. We did a whole interview, and he was talking about, now he's like a very, very sort of a very leftist kind of guy. And he was talking, the whole thing was about, it was called A Former White Nationalist. And they banned the whole video. They just took it down. And we appealed it. They're like, no, this is about white nationalism. And like, there's no...
Nobody's going to even watch it to find out that you're actually speaking against it.
Yeah, so it's bizarre. I don't know. I really hope they figure out something to this.
Actually, because this is a topic, we have to give a shout out to the recent letter XMNA got 4 bipartisan Congress people to come out and saying they wrote a letter. These Congress people wrote a letter on Facebook's reporting system being used to suppress religious freedom, says bipartisan congressional letter. So this is for
US that's Congress. Great.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah, because Facebook is the worst.
Right.
When it comes to this stuff. Yeah, I've just noticed that, when the Beatles they wanted to write about LSD, they made a song called Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. So they had to be creative within limitations. So you have a choice. You can either, it's a really shitty choice. It's a choice between bad and worse. So I guess we just have to find a way to navigate it until we have a better way. And I guess, especially for people who are not, we're very fortunate that we're connected with people who can get our accounts back and stuff. But most people aren't, unfortunately. And a lot of them just fly under the radar. So try to help out as much as we can. Patron questions. Last thing, for any of you who have had this kind of issue, message us. If this kind of thing happens, message us and we'll try to see what we can do. Start a campaign. We've done it for other people and it's worked. So,
by the way, if you're not a patron, become a patron. You could join in these live discussions and ask your question. And also, Ali forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, if we reach 500 patrons, we're going to start translating our shows into Arabic, to Persian, to Urdu, Malay. So that's when we're going to get started on that once we hit 500 patrons. So not all of our shows, but we're going to go by popularity and the ones that we think are key for Arab speaking or Arabic speaking, the more, anyways, go on. Patron question.
Yeah. I was going to mention that at the end, by the way.
Okay.
Just to let you know.
Okay.
There's a lot of,
well, I didn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of, hey, okay, well, hey, you work out. Okay, I don't. Okay, here we go. I know I'm going to start. I got my Bowflex dumbbells January 31st once I move into the new house.
Good.
Okay, so, yeah, that's a plan. I'll talk to you about that later. So, first question from Blonde Infidel. Can you talk about
girl?
Yeah,
your girl. Yeah, we love her. Can you talk about mental health challenges for ex-Muslims and any thoughts on what's needed to help in this space, both in non-Muslim and Muslim societies?
Yeah, so in non-Muslim societies, okay, first of all, the mental health issues are usually like trauma and anxiety and things like that stem from the fact that you grew up your whole life. It's like the Truman Show. All ex-Muslims lived through the Truman Show, right?
I know.
We
That's
lived this world. We thought this was our life, and then all of a sudden we realized it was all a lie. And so you go from complete order. I mean, I'm like, my mom used to always say, like, we only have to read one book. All the answers are in one book. Like, it's just everything makes so much sense. And then you go into like this complete chaos, because freedom is really scary. You're like, okay, I know this isn't the answer, but then what is the answer? Why am I alive? What am I doing? What is my life? Who am I? What do I believe? And so, of course, that's going to throw us into a tailspin. Now, in non-Muslim countries where there is support, you can usually find, I mean, there are things like recovering from religion, which are specifically for people that are leaving different religions. But then also there's just like government support through your school or through your work and stuff like that. And even though it may not be perfectly tailored for you because the person you're speaking to is not really familiar with your context, you know, but at least it's supportive. They can give you some tools to help, you know, deal with issues. But in Muslim majority countries, obviously you can't go to a therapist and tell them this because it's against the law to leave Islam. So people have to keep these things private. And like you were even mentioning, people don't even want to tell their own brothers. They don't even want to tell their own spouses. So they're not going to go and tell some therapist. I mean, that's, in a lot of those countries, mental health is just not provided anyway because there's a stigma against it still.
Right. Yeah.
But that's the reason why we started Free Hearts, Free Minds, was exactly for that. It's because there's nobody else helping those people. There are so many ex-Muslims that are just they're literally suicidal. Most of the people that contact us are just on the precipice of suicide because they've had it. They just can't see a way out. And that's really what the miracle that Jimmy performs, which is to help give each person individualized tools that will help them navigate their own life to reach their own specific goals.
Right.
Because everybody, you know, there's different things that will help different people to cope with their different circumstances. But yeah, we need to normalize discussion about this, because I think that ex-Muslims, that when they go through this, they feel like they isolate themselves because they don't realize how common it is, and that we've all gone through this. Not just ex-Muslims, but usually anybody, ex-Jehovah's Witness. If you're leaving any fundamentalist, tight-knit community and you're going off on your own, it's really, really scary, and you'll need some support navigating through that, and that's just perfectly normal.
By the way, just to emphasize, like what you guys are doing at Free Hearts, Free Minds, this is not like just talking to people like you, because you guys have Jimmy, and Jimmy is a professional. Like I want people to understand, like this is not just something that you guys are doing that is not educated, is not based on.
No, his master's thesis is about Free Hearts, Free Minds, is about the 6-week program that he's developed. No, but so he's got his professors and I'm going through the actual 6 weeks with Jimmy so that I can get a better sense of exactly what it is that he's doing. But if people click on the testimonials and they read, like, the difference between when a person started with Free Hearts, Free Minds and how they feel at the end, then there's no question that what we're doing is incredibly helpful and practical and real.
But
you have testimonials from Pakistan,
but also like you have the academic and the scientific background, because Jimmy knows what he's doing. Like, he has all the credentials and everything that he needs to know. So just want to clear that. By the way, I just want to point out to our patrons that I haven't interrupted Yasmine once today, right? I'm doing really good, because I think if I interrupted you today, our patrons would have crucified me. We had Sarah on, and they were so upset with me. And like, Armin, why are you not letting her finish? And I'm getting really better. Like, see what I'm doing for our patrons. Like, I'm getting better at not interrupting our guests. But go on.
Speaking of crucifying Armin, I have to announce that it's December, and December 25th is Armin's birthday.
Yeah.
Okay, so just when you talked about being crucified, that reminded me. So I wanted to let everybody know, if you have gifts or sentiments or nude photos, whatever you want to send them his way. Maybe we have the chance.
Share this episode for my birthday. That would be good.
Well.
We're going.
So and you've got testimonials. I just want to say the site is freeheartsfreeminds.com. You've got testimonials from Pakistan, Sudan, Tunisia, Saudi Arabia, Algeria, India. I mean, just all over the map. It is incredible the kind of work that you're doing. So I want people to know, as Armin is saying, that this is actually it's a very serious professional, streamlined kind of thing.
Yeah,
okay, next question.
It's not just a side thing. This is serious stuff. We're going.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good questions. So let's just make this quick, Armin.
Yeah,
so Armin, you and I are not going to. Let's just let Yaz talk.
Okay.
Judy Flattery is asking, what is the most effective way for Western women to support oppressed women in the Muslim world?
Okay, so remember when we were talking about Nike and you said that Nike's going to do whatever it can do because it wants to make a profit? Mm-hmm. So I think that the problem there is that they do make a profit. The problem, like, Muslims are like 1% of the US population, right? And half of those are women, and a fraction of those women wear hijab, because most American Muslim women don't wear hijab. They're not actually making this stuff for hijabi women. They're making this stuff because they know that it's going to make all of these woke Western liberals just salivate themselves, just like cover themselves in the warmth of virtue signaling. And they're going to be like, ooh, Nike is so wonderful. Look at them, how they're so inclusive and whatever. That's what we have to, that's why it's important that we speak out against it. And when the question is, what can Western feminists do, is you can speak out against it in the same way that you would speak out against it if they were supporting fundamentalist Christian clothing. Speak out against modesty culture, speak out against victim blaming, speak out against slut shaming, speak out against rape culture, speak out against this modesty, purity culture that we know is dangerous. People act like they've never heard of this in 2019, right? Like, this is old research. We know how dangerous this stuff is on women's bodies. You were just talking about Elishba. Look at those beautiful photos behind you of her boudoir photos. The reason why she's doing that, it's all that body positive stuff, right? Like how important it is that girls are being raised in this shame culture. So what Western feminists can do is they can speak out against that garbage when they see it in their societies, instead of making these corporations think that when they do that they're going to get support. What has to happen is that when they do that, they have to get backlash, and then it won't be worth it for them to do it anymore.
Yep. Modesty culture is rape culture. They're synonyms. All right. So next question. Aaron Smith is asking, this is happening in Mormonism as well, but it tends to be with the more educated members. Do you think this faith transition wave, he's talking about the faith transition wave, is happening with the uneducated masses or limited to educated folks? So I guess the people, I assume he's talking about people who are leaving the faith. He's saying it's happening in Mormonism as well. And that's true. Actually work. Yeah. The people that I hear from most regarding my book are actually Mormons and Catholics. So,
I think critical thinking is the key. So we say education, but I guess it depends what kind of education, right? Like Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi had a PhD in Islamic studies. So
and like Raza Aslan,
Yeah, exactly.
Both PhDs.
Yeah. So we need people to engage their critical thinking skills. We need them to question. Mormonism is so easy, like it's so dumb. It's almost like Scientology. It is, but it's almost like Scientology in its how easy it would be for it to unravel if somebody just looked at it a little carefully, like not even that carefully. So I think that critical analysis, critical thinking, encouraging people to question and think is the key.
I think they're all like extremely dumb. We're just used to some of them more than the other ones. Like if like Christianity was not normal and somebody came like, there was this Eve came and a snake talked to her, and then you have to cut your penis. People are like, what the hell is all this, right? So
Yeah.
like, I think you're just used to it, Rebecca.
And
Yeah.
it's also that it's younger, right? Mormonism, Scientology are so young that you look at it, you're like, okay, these guys are lunatics. But
Yeah.
like, the older something is, the more mild, just
Yeah.
mounds of bullshit there is around to work
For
through.
sure.
So.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Lois Edwards, hey Lois, is she's asking, as a volunteer humanist chaplain at Mount Royal U, how do I talk to Muslim students who are brainwashed and have all of the pat answers? They are trying to convert us. That's a good question.
They're trying to convert a humanist chaplain.
No, I think she's serious. I think they
No,
are
I know.
trying-
I'm just laughing at the arrogance.
I know. It's like, oh, humanist chaplain, let's go and let's see if we can talk her into some Allah.
Since you don't have the answer, let me give you the answer. I would just say be patient, and when they try to convert you, keep questioning. Just keep asking. And, I say this, but at the same time, I don't have the patience to do it because I'm sick and tired of out of those same bog standard responses. Like, you just know, right? They have like that Islamic bingo that people have online. Like, you just know the responses that you're going to get, which is why I don't bother engaging in debate with Muslims. Sometimes if I can see that there's like genuine questions or genuine thinking or genuine doubting, then I will. But if there are people just coming along and spouting the nonsense that we were all taught in the mosque, then I just don't have patience for that. But if this humanist chaplain, I assume usually chaplains are a lot more, they're very patient people, definitely more patient than I am. And so, I think that through questioning and through asking them about their religion, you can get them to points where they're going to recognize their cognitive dissonance. And then hopefully that will help to just start to tug on some
the Socratic
some threads.
You're saying you're the Socratic method.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with that.
Okay.
That's the best method. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to Blonded. So I'm going to try to give everybody unique questions, but I mean, Blonded Phil is also saying, are you planning to coming to New Zealand, or are any of us planning to go to New Zealand?
Yes.
You are, right? So,
I am. In March, I'll be in for 2 weeks, Australia and New Zealand.
Okay, amazing.
Can you come visit me in Philippines since you're that close?
Are you just saying online that that's where you are?
Yeah, but I mean, yeah.
We don't
Everybody
know where.
knows now.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nobody's saying where.
Well,
It's
nobody
a big
knows.
country.
Yeah, okay. But then,
All right.
Let's go next
But-
topic.
Okay. So
No, but
Matt-
guys, she asked all of us, like, guys, I'm really close to Australia and New Zealand. If you guys are, if you guys want to invite me to anything Australia and New Zealand related, I'm very close to you guys. So any events you want to do, let me know. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I had something, and this is insane that I had to turn down, and I hate myself for it. I had to turn down a thing in Australia in early Feb because it was too close to the day that we're moving. So, but we're talking about potentially having something later in the year. So if that materializes, I'll let you guys know. So, and it would be Australia. I'll probably do New Zealand as well. Matt Rose is asking, please do speak about the history on where hijab originated in the Arab world, because I heard that hijab was used in brothels in Iraq or somewhere in the Arab regions. I didn't know about that, but
Hijab
I feel
comes
like
from this. My people brought the hijab. It's our fault. It came from Zoroastrianism.
Okay, so covering.
A lot of people are really interested in the history of where hijab started, and they're like, it's pre-Islamic and whatever. It's like, yeah, it probably is. It's a cloth on the head. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be pretty hard to figure out, like, where did pants originate? When did people start wearing underwear? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. The problem is, like, I know where it originated in Islam, and I know how it originated as something that people are forced to wear, whether they like it or not, so that they don't burn in hell for eternity. Like, that's what matters to me. But yes, it probably was pre-Islamic. It's probably not even Arab, no,
who
knows?
Actually,
but Ali, let me
directly
make this very, very, very clear. Okay, the covering is not the issue. The symbolism is the issue, right? So when in Zoroastrianism, the covering was not for modesty. The covering was dead things in Zoroastrianism shouldn't be touching the ground. So your hair shouldn't be touching the ground, your nails shouldn't be touching the ground. So you're just trying to make sure there's no hair touching the ground, right? If you're putting a hair covering because it's cold, that's a different symbolism, right? Even among Arabs, if the head covering is like, hey, I'm not a slave girl, I'm someone's wife, that's a different symbolism. When it comes to Islam, this means I'm a sex object, I'm someone's property, and it's modesty culture, and we are against not just the covering, we're against what it represents. Right? So
and sex slaves don't wear hijab because you can rape them as please, but good clean women wear hijab and all that stuff.
Well, because if somebody steals your sex slave, it's not as big of a deal as somebody stealing your wife, right? So you mark your property from less valuable to more valuable, but they're all properties.
That's actually Armin hit on it. So what I was going to say just really quickly, that the history of it is actually directly tied. The idea of covering up women is directly tied to the idea of marriage as property. The whole concept of marriage, right? Husbandry, animal husbandry is management of a woman. So you have ownership of a woman, you pay the father money for the woman. A woman who's never been touched by any other man has a higher market value. Yes. When you keep her there, you want to make sure other men don't take her, so you keep her behind a parda or a partition, you keep her covered up when you take her outside. So the entire thing of covering up women is related to the idea that women are the property of men, and that is also the history of marriage. So
marriage is a transaction between a father and a husband. Right?
That's it. That's what it is.
But Razib is saying Armin is starting to talk a lot now. What, am I not?
Armin, stop talking. Stop talking. Okay. Here. Anyway.
Am I not supposed to talk at all? Okay, go on.
We just have a few more minutes. So I think that that was it. Yeah, Zia Rahman. So this is the same guy who was talking about banning the Quran earlier. He's saying why Facebook allows Quran on Facebook when it is all about killing. So
I mean, it would allow the Bible on Facebook too, which also has, imagine having somebody putting Old Testament verses up there, right? That some of those things are way more vicious than what's written in the Quran.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's back to that same old, right? We're not going to ban things. Banning is just not the right way to deal with anything. You just educate people about what this book is. Read it. In fact, people get angry when they're like, why is Islam being taught in schools? I'm like, I am all for that. Teach it in all the schools. Let people know what this is, because part of the problem now is that they don't know what it is. They don't understand it. All of the stuff we were talking about hijab in the beginning, people not understanding the difference between a hijab and a hat. If they took that in grade 10, civ class or history class or whatever it is, whenever you're going to stick it into the curriculum, then people would have an understanding of what this religion is. And I think that that's actually something that is important. We should encourage that.
As long as it's in history class and not an Islamic class, because that would be propaganda.
No, yeah, for sure. But I'm talking about like in the public school system in some states, or I guess that they have, their system is federal.
Right.
But I have had lots of people complain to me, like in the grade 10 curriculum, they're learning about Islam. I'm like, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
So that your kids aren't going to grow up uneducated and ignorant about this religion. And in fact, I think it inoculates people from indoctrination. So if there's Muslim kids in that classroom and they're learning the history of Islam, that it's going to be harder to convince that girl to like enter into a forced marriage or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Because she's been enlightened.
Right.
She's spent some time critically analyzing the religion, because Lord knows we're not allowed to do that in our homes or in our mosques.
Right.
Yeah. So last, there's two questions that are both related to your travels and your tour. So last two questions. So George Kordahi actually lives around here. He's saying, hi, Yasmin. Our group in Mississauga has now hosted talks by 3 of the 4 original SJME gangs. So, yes, that's true.
I'm the only one left.
You're the only one left. So me, Armin, Faisal, all 3 of us have spoken there. You are the only one. So any plans to visit our area?
They left the best for last. I've
got a bit of a tour with CFI happening Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa. So when I'm going there, then I can speak in Mississauga, you said?
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
You should
Yeah,
I'll,
I just recently spoke in Toronto, and while I was there, the Mississauga people just reached out to me, and we just did a side event in there as well. Both of them were
Perfect.
You're doing Ottawa as well?
Yes.
Good. The people there are amazing, by the way.
I love
Ottawa.
They're gonna treat you
Yeah.
like you're, yeah.
And then, and the second question related to this is from Mars. Mars is saying, Yasmine, will you be participating in an official book tour? It'd be great to get your story more publicity. And I think you already answered that.
Yeah, so that's so I have to just update my website. I'm not very good at that. It's end of term and finals and getting grades in and everything, but I have to I will update my website with all of the different places that I'll be going. And if you subscribe to my newsletter, that's where you'll get details about where and when. So just on my website, I'll just have a general
newsletter.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. So you're subscribed.
Yeah, I'm already subscribed to it. Yeah, George
Calgary,
is asking
Calgary
when.
as well.
I think you said February, right? In
Yes.
Mississauga in Toronto. So that's February. Judy Flattery is saying that you're also invited to Santa Barbara, and I've been there, by the way. Santa Barbara.
I want to go to Santa Barbara.
I went there. Actually, it was right when we were all in California. Remember?
Oh,
we went to
yeah.
Sears place and stuff.
I'm speaking in Santa Barbara. Judy invited me there. Like I forgot when. Judy, remind me when. So maybe you guys could join in. We could do it together.
Yeah.
Please send me everybody who's so George and Judy. Please send me a message through my website, and then I'll get back to you, and then we can plan this. Thank you.
And they really are. It's a great group. Actually, Sam Harris, when he started out, the very first thing he did was in Santa Barbara, as I recall. So that was many years ago. So anyway. Yes,
before you say yes, I had a really great experience with Lewis in Calgary as well. Lewis is also in the live chat. Calgary.
Oh, I want to go to Calgary. Lewis, invite me to Calgary. I've never been yet, and lots of people in Calgary have been asking me to go.
It's an amazing group. So Calgary, like over there, that's where Nate Phelps, right? Nathan Phelps is. Megan.
He's going to be speaking with me at a conference in Vancouver at the end of April. So
he is one of the most powerful and moving speakers I've ever heard.
Oh yeah,
ever.
Wow.
It's just he's.
And Judy responded. I'm speaking in Santa Barbara in May apparently. Okay, so if you guys want to do it together in May, I'm going to be there. So I'll give you more details later.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you. So the new book is called Unveiled: How Western Liberals Empower Radical Islam.
Yes.
I feel like it's about so much more than that. It is I have to, so one thing I'm going to say, it's not easy to read, right? I think when you talked about it in person, there was a way that you presented it, but the way that it's written in the book is your story is just, it's a pretty harrowing story, but it's also hopeful and it's also really, really inspiring. Freeheartsfreeminds.com, that's Yaz's other project. So check that out. All these links are going to be here at the bottom.
And the audio, I'm waiting for the audiobook, and the audiobook is going to be in her own voice as well, so that's exciting. So
right,
yeah.
And then also listen to
when
Yasmine's,
is the audiobook coming out again? Sorry,
I don't know. It's in Audible's hands. You know, Allah.
Leave it outshallah. There's and then and finally, I think the Sam Harris episode, the interview you did with Sam. That was really, really good. So check that out too. We're going to put links to all of those things here in this podcast.
I say sometimes when I
Iblis. So it'll be so much fun. Hey, this was like a party. It was like, we're back
together, reunion.
Yeah, we hope we made you feel more like a guest than just like a. Oh, I think we did.
No, I didn't feel like a guest. I felt like one of the gang. It was nice. Yay. It's even better. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really good, man.
Great.
All right.
Thanks,
so
guys.
thank you everybody for joining in. Thank you for all your questions, and watch out for Yaz. Just go check it out, and if she's coming to town, seems like she's traveling a lot. Could you go and see her and get a signed copy?
Yasmine Mohammed is coming to town.
You're seriously unstoppable. Like, remember, like a couple of years ago, I told you, yes, you're like a rising rock star, and you were like, no. I was like, yeah, just wait. Let's talk 2 years from now. And now it's been proven I was right. Like, you're unstoppable, seriously. All right. Okay, guys.
And hope there's lots more to come.
Yeah.
You really are. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Bye, guys.
Let's stop. Talk to you next time.
The secular jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadist.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air, and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.